Well, welcome everyone to our August 2023 edition of our CIO's EdTech Leaders webcast. I'm David Couch with the Kentucky Department of Education. This is something we do on a monthly basis for those that are new to us, that are just joining when our OET staff or districts. So thanks for joining us this morning. We also have something called Go Soapbox that we ask that you, throughout the webcast, just not respond to the poll questions we have, but any other questions or comments you have that'll bubble to the top, and either our staff will answer those directly or we'll answer those on here. And so, Chuck, you got that duty today, watching that for us. Well, thank you for doing that.
10-4.
For most of you, the summer break is over because school has begun or getting ready to begin. So hope you had a good summer break, and if you have a few more days, please take time to enjoy that. It's a good day out here today in Frankfurt. I think it's going to be a pretty good day all day today. So let's start with some news that has happened since the last webcast. Commissioner Glass announced that his last day with the Kentucky Department of Education will be 31 September. And the Kentucky Board of Education will meet on the 21 August to discuss the next steps, just a few days. Part of that discussion, although I have no idea what they'll be discussing, be honest with you, but I suspect part of it is interim, who the interim commissioner will be when Commissioner Glass leaves on the 31st. And then the steps for a full-time commissioner, of advertising that and going through the process of filling it. And typically in the past, since 1990, the Kentucky Board of Education has selected the commissioner. It's not an elected position. They have selected the commissioner. And there's a new step that was added in the last legislative session that whoever the Kentucky Board of Education selects, it must be confirmed by the Senate. And so the legislative session starts in January, goes up to April. And so it would not, and I suspect that person that the board would select, if they even were able to select it, by December, would want to see to make sure they are confirmed before they left whatever they were doing, fill in. So that interim slot will be important of filling that in. So I wanted, as we know more about that, we'll let you know more going forward. I did want to spend some time here. I sent you an email yesterday, and I know we were just going to meet today, but I thought it was of such urgency because we had a district, and I sent you an example of Fort Thomas. And Bob, I know you've been working on this, and we had another district that actually saw some of the tools in there and tried it themselves and saw that they were being set up for something very similar. So, and Phil Coleman is going to talk about one of our favorite topics this time of year is our DDoS attacks at the beginning of school year. We have a good idea who does those. I can't say with certainty, but obviously it's probably those that don't really want the school year to begin yet and want summer to last a little bit longer. It's probably the equivalent of raising the school fire alarm kind of thing. But Phil will give us an update on that. But let's circle back to Bob about our words of wisdom, what we found yesterday, and what districts need to prepare for with these cyber attacks, which we know have significantly increased from 4 billion attempted attacks on Kentucky K-12 to, is it 65 billion, I think, now annually, and that's going to be on our annual report. So, Bob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, David. And there's so many things to say about this. We all know phishing is getting a lot worse, and we block a lot of phishes, but we can't really block all of them. No matter how hard we try, there's some that are always going to get through. And phishing also is a two-way street. There's the person being phished, and right now, we've got, sometimes our districts are phished, and it's someone pretending to be a vendor, for example, or someone else. And then sometimes our vendors are phished, and it's someone pretending to be one of us. It's someone pretending to be someone from the K-12 world. And as you probably have already read, one of our vendors received an email, and it looked really, really good, in my opinion, from a phisher who's attempting to look a lot like a district person. And I really appreciate that vendor, Apple, for sending the district a notification, the district that was attempted to be impersonated, a notification showing them exactly what was going on, because that's something as we move forward is pretty obvious, and we all want to kind of take a look at that and make sure we're not being impersonated as well. So just to summarize it, Apple received an email from a phisher, and it looked like it came from Fort Thomas Independent, and Apple noticed that it was not the correct domain in the email, and there were some other issues with that email, but not too many. And so they alerted the district, and then another district went in and looked at the whois information, and that's a key component. And I really recommend that all of our districts out there who are on this call, and those that aren't, I guess, go into whois and look for lookalike domains for your district. And we all remember back in the 90s when whitehouse.gov was put online for the first time. And then there was this lookalike domain that used .com that took you to a whole different type of site, if anyone remembers. And I'm not sure where whitehouse.com goes, but don't look at it right now, just in case. But that's the sort of lookalike domain that you probably want to look for your district. So not just the lookalike domains that are just like this one that had, instead of Fort Thomas.kyschools.us, it had Fort Thomas kyschools.us. You want to look for multiple different versions of that. And then if you see that lookalike domain in a whois search, and there's some, brief instructions that David sent out with that, I encourage you to kind of start a fraud alert, start some sort of an alert with that registrar, and try to get that domain taken down as fraudulent. Because the longer it stays up there, the longer it can be abused, unfortunately. We don't know how long that has been out there. We already have another school district that went out and found one of their own. And then I know of another school district that didn't have that lookalike domain, but they went ahead and bought it themselves for 10 years just to make sure no one else could get it. And that's something that a lot of businesses are doing right now themselves so that they cannot be impersonated by phishers and fraudsters and cyber criminals.
How much did that cost to buy it for that long, Bob?
Well, at that particular registrar, I believe it was just a little over $100 for 10 years. And so it's not a whole lot of money. Now, again, it's sort of like playing whack-a-mole, because you might not think of a domain name, and if the cyber criminal does, then they'll reach out and get it, and you have to go through the trouble of trying to get it taken down. But if you can pick out the ones that are most obvious, those are the ones you're going to go for if you want to go ahead and do that. And I do kind of recommend you go out and at least do the whois search, and every now and then do that. Now there are service providers, there are vendors who can do this sort of searching for you. It's kind of like with my Discover card. They go out every now and then and look up and see if my information has been breached on the dark web. And that's just a service they provide. You may have some security providers that offer that same service. They'll go out and look for fraudulent domains, lookalike domains. And so they may do that and you don't even know, that's just never been something that you've asked. So I encourage you, if you've got any particular providers that work with your district, ask them, see if that's a service they provide. It's something we'll be looking into as well. And there's also a lot of help. I mentioned that MSISAC, you've heard me talk about them before, and you've heard me talk about a gentleman by the name of Colin Glover who works with CISA. They're a federal agency. They work with Department of Homeland Security and FBI, CIA. They definitely recommend reaching out to MSISAC, becoming a member, taking part and using the free resources that they've got. They can help you. For example, if you're going to go and file a fraud complaint against a registrar, then MSISAC can help you with that process. It's not a difficult process, but again, it's just a free service that they can help with. So I encourage you to do that. So kind of moving forward, one of the things that we really like is the fact that there was some way for the Apple person to identify that this was a phish. And the good news is that the people involved had MFA on their accounts. And so because there was MFA, there was no chance for that to have been an actual user account that was used, at least a CATS user account. And so that's huge. What I do recommend is that not only for your CATS user accounts, which all of our adults in Kentucky K-12 should have MFA on their accounts, you really need to put those on your personal accounts as well, so that when someone registers or tries to use your account, it's not actually you that's or your account that's being used. They have to go and use a different account that can't be tied back to you.
Bob, let me jump in there.
Yeah.
And when Bob says you, he's just not talking about you. He's talking about your district office staff, your leaders. I have met individually with every associate and commissioner here, collectively and individually, encourage them, so your C-level peer in your district, along with their staff, to understand the level of magnitude of attempted attacks that we have occurring right now in Kentucky K-12. A lot of it has to do with the amount of money we have, not you individually have, but that they have, and then the willingness and the helpful nature of K-12 in general, but also salary schedules are very appealing. So they are crosswalking to their personal email accounts, bank accounts, social media accounts. So I would encourage you to have a discussion with your superintendent, along with your C-level peers, along with your principals, for them to carry that message to their staff as well, and the sense of urgency to have it done, and just how to recognize a phish, but also something like the banners that you talked about, Bob, is what we told the staff here is it is for sure a cyber scam. If you see some KD staff member, somebody pretending, obviously, you see the yellow banner. That should be the top highlight, that it is a scam, that it's not someone really being sent from KD to another KD staff member. And hopefully you have something else. And I know, Bob, you put that in the note that we sent out. But this is over and over again. There's two levels that we have to deal with cybersecurity. One is the technology level. But to be honest with you, the other big level is just the people level and becoming much more savvy. But some of that, as you're saying, Bob, is taking the measures to protect yourself and make it more difficult with multi-factor authentication. So we ask you to champion that within your organization. You can give some examples of that's really happening, because I find typically in academia, at all levels, there's a lackadaisical attitude toward cybersecurity until it goes bad, and then they're all very interested in it. But we're trying to be very preventative, but also let them know that these cyber criminals are in large numbers and they're going full court press of every kind of angle. And we show that chart over and over again of how much K-12 in education is being targeted in comparison to every other industry. We by far lead it. So take that next step, encourage yourself personally, because you're definitely going to be high on the radar screen given your positions, but also your superintendents, all your C-levels, all your levels of staff that you have in your district down to your school level to protect themselves.
Absolutely, David. Great advice. And the last thing I do want to reiterate, the caution banner is really hugely important, because that gives normal people just a quick way to look at an email and say, there might be something wrong with this. Now, it's not 100%. Nothing's going to be 100%, but it's a great way for folks to very quickly kind of get an idea about that. And then secondly, make sure that if you think you've got a phishing email, you don't trust anything about it. For example, they might put a phone number that takes you right back to them. So if you're checking a phishing email, always go for some sort of out-of-band communication method, or look up an exact website. If you get a phishing email or a call from someone pretending to be a vendor, Don't call them back on the information that they've given you. Call back on information that you know and that you trust. Go to the official website, that sort of stuff. And thankfully, that's what the Apple representative did. And again, I really appreciate that person for taking the extra step and letting us know about this, because that's very meaningful. And hopefully everyone would do the same.
I'll make one more point is when I talk to everyone individually and collectively here at the department and encourage them to champion it, we also have a technology planning committee that has a representative of every KD office here that we meet with. Can meet with them monthly if we have things on there that they go back and champion it. But I highly encourage your superintendent and your superintendent's office that you tell them directly in non-techno widget words of the importance of protecting themselves at work and privately. The next big opportunity for them is anyone that deals with finances in the district office. That's big money. And so it pays off. And, for a cyber criminal, they just got to get 1 out of 1,000, 1 out of 10,000 for it to be a huge benefit for them just to be duped into giving money over. The CFO, anyone in the finance office, and I regularly, meet with Rob and Kenny. And anytime something happens, just like this incident we had in Fort Thomas, I send it right straight to Robin. So she understands and she can make her own staff aware of how much and how determined these cyber criminals are with the financial, anyone related to finance and buying things, which includes you all, as well with technology and our technology vendors and service providers are top targets as well to try to be duped. And probably your communication staff is next in the line. Anyone that does that they like to get in there and cause chaos if they can. But anyone, our OET staff has heard this from me, is you got to include your savviness. You got to get your game up on the techniques that they're using. I just think of the calls I get for cyber criminals. And I do a simple one is typically when I get a call, and you all know this, you can tell it's a scam. Besides, I know the phone companies are getting a lot better that says it's a scam. But even those are working around with it. You can tell when you answer it, there's this pause. You can tell it's gone to a phone bank and someone said, oh, I got someone to fix it up. So there's a long pause, which is a good signal to it. But here's one of the things I do with them is I take a look what they're calling from because a very high percentage of these are coming from foreign countries. And they have no idea. They've been in the United States. They have no idea where states are, let alone counties, let alone cities. And so I'll take a look where they're calling from. And I'll ask them, I just do a simple question, where are you calling from? And if they say Kentucky, I'll say, what part of Kentucky? Because I can see the area code. Tell me about the city. And typically I get the hang up because you can almost see them turning and looking to say, I have no idea where this is at. I got one that was pretending to be from Lexington. And I said, oh, you live in Lexington, work in Lexington. What county is Lexington in? Of course, they don't know the county. Anyone that lives there would know it'd be Fayette. So just simple things, just asking them the questions, you can almost see what's going on with these organizations. But that's a good technique that really throws them up and gets the quick hang up from them. But it is full court press, every level, including the elderly, obviously being attacked. Constantly worry about my mom being too trusting and trying to be helpful, being a former teacher, and try to game her up on it as well. Phil, we also have our beginning of the year usual. I don't know how much it is, our DDoS attacks. And obviously we're appreciative of the good DDoS service that we have. So let's talk about DDoS a little bit.
So every year I like to throw this slide up. It's been updated obviously for the last 12 months, but wait for it to pop up here. But it's nothing that a district has really done wrong in this one. This is just people trying to be disruptive, I think. And what you'll see is we've had 863 attacks in the last 12 months. And those attacks have targeted 106 school districts. So we do have a good number of our school districts that have not experienced a DDoS attack. And, we have to keep track of this. We have a number that we really shoot for. We want 100% of those to be mitigated very, very quickly. When we have 859 that were mitigated very quickly. So uh, that's an important part, because generally, if they can't be mitigated quickly, it may take, hours to actually figure out what they're doing. And they're getting smarter, David. We've had a couple just in the last 2 or 3 weeks that have kind of tricked us up a little bit, and but we've caught on to them. But it's a kind of a full-time job just to make sure that all of those are mitigated automatically, because if they're not, we just do not have the Army to be able to defend that off if we don't have those mitigated automatically. And that's a service that we provide. And just wanted to report out on that. And I have, obviously, I have the data for every school district. I have the data for each month that we want to do. But typically, in August and September and in the 1st of October, we get a tremendous amount of or a tremendous increase in those kinds of attacks. And obviously the chart will show you we went from 8 days of possibly being hurt, and where we wouldn't have access or have very poor access to the internet, be disruptive, down to about 1 day, a little over 1 day, that total for the whole year. So that's a pretty good number that we look at the impact on instructional time, and that's the most important number that we have. So I'd also wanted to just follow up a little bit, David, on while you are talking about, you and Bob, the technique that we see a lot of doesn't require the bad guy or the phisher to breach your email. So you may have all the good security around that you possibly can, and it's working, but they're just impersonating people. And y'all talked a little bit about that, and that just seems to be a new technique that you don't have to do anything wrong to be impersonated. So.
And that's something I've had to have also a discussion with KD staff, because those kind of positions I just told you about are the top level impersonations. Your superintendent, your chief financial officer, yourself. We had that happen 1 or 2 weeks ago in KDE, where they were impersonating and just asking for something as simple as, what is your cell phone number? Which should have been a good key, but besides the yellow banner popping up that for a KDE staff member, is they probably already have their cell phone number of their direct supervisor. And it should, once again, it's working on the savviness. We can put a lot of technical things in place, but we got to get our staff a lot more savvy, and staff just not KDE, but throughout here, of how to recognize these cyber criminals and in action, just the clues that they give, because this will be an ongoing field of battle going forward from this time forward, and because it's so lucrative for the cyber criminals. And they did once again, it just takes a few to do that. Bob, and this is something I like, is the legislature enacted the requirement to have an annual cybersecurity health check. I guess it was around security, and we really encourage to take that a step and give EdTech leaders the opportunity and the requirement to get in front of their board, just like I do with our board and our commissioner, their superintendent and their board, obviously not in an open session, to lay out, the cybersecurity landscape, the health check, the pluses and the minuses of that. I know we're getting ready to do that with our board this year, and this is just our annual reminder that it's by law that it must be in place by the 31st of August. Anything you had to add to that? I know I took a lot of your thunder, probably.
That's okay. No, it's a great opportunity. I didn't have any questions on Go Soapbox for this, because it is, here we are in the middle of August, and so I didn't think that was going to be too helpful. I think everyone's aware of it. Make sure you get this done and take this opportunity for your district. And it's a great way to help advocate for more security if you can show folks how you may be weak in certain areas. And David's absolutely right. If you're going to be talking about something and really kind of explaining where you are weak in certain areas, and even really where you're not weak, where you're very strong, that's something that I would recommend you do behind closed doors with the board. And that is a legal option that you have, and I encourage you to exercise that option. If this is the first time you're hearing about this, and there may be a new CIO out there, reach out to me. reach out to your KE, your CATS engineer, and reach out to me, and we can give you a little bit of help. But things that I focus on are data systems, any data breaches that have occurred for KDE. For the one that I present, I really focus on any sort of security issues with KDE, and exactly what I would like to have in the next year. What sorts of things have we done recently? What do we have in place? What do we want to do better at? So kind of focus on some of those broad headings. If this is your first time trying to accomplish something like this, it doesn't have to be 50 pages. Mine isn't. It, can be only one page if you're just getting this going and moving forward with it. But make sure that it doesn't just say a few words that don't mean anything. Make sure it's actually actionable information and provide some good justifications for why you want to move forward. So it's a key component, I think, for a security strategy.
I'll tell you the nice part about the legislation and the law to us is it gives us leverage in OET for other offices that may have technology-enabled systems. And especially if your district gets bigger, you have some shadow IT going on, which means you have them going off and buying things, doing things, and not including the technology staff. And it's one of the great ways and leverages, because it's in law and reg and shown that just don't report it to the commissioner and board by me. It gives you leverage to get their cooperation if normally they would not. And we have that leverage too with just how when we present the operational plan, which I'm going to share with you, the annual, is because that's presented to the board and they must approve it. It gets leverage of these other offices who I find my peers in other states, for the most part, don't have any idea what's going on in their other offices in their DOE. I would say 45 of the 50 states, they do not have the leverage to find out who's doing what with these other offices and what they're buying and their data system. And so I greatly appreciate, as the CIO, if I'm going to be in charge and held accountable and responsible, then I'm going to want to know. And if you always hear me say, I stick my nose in what folks are doing. Because at the end of the day, usually the CEO of an organization holds the CIO accountable. If they weren't involved, they usually say, why weren't you involved? And so, we all run into instances where folks go off and do things in our organization and they work hard to keep you out and technology out until it goes bad. And then there's a rescue mission that you're involved with. And typically use that as a lessons learned of this is why we need to be involved, because we have wisdom doing large scale systems and all the different other moving parts. But I hope you look at it as an opportunity, I do, to really get a good health check on all the data systems and technology systems that we have, just not in KD, but we give a broad brush of what's going on across the state to our board so they get a feel, but also some of the vulnerabilities that I want them aware of before it goes bad. So they're not going, well, I had no idea. They're aware of it, and obviously there's finances to cover those, and they make a strategic decision and a willingness to accept a certain amount of risk. Instead of paying for XYZ, we're willing to accept that, but they know ahead of time, so they're not shocked about it. So this is always a good opportunity, and as most of you know, is the regs and laws that we have in place. It's usually the last things that I mention of why someone must do things. We spend a lot of time and energy on the why that's important. In the day, we may have small number of organizations here at KD or districts that push against it, and then we have to use the reg or law to enforce it. But 8%, 99% of the time, we really try to spend the time convincing folks, and this is one of those I hope you look at as a good opportunity. Next item we have here is about our data systems and data, infinite campus, cases, school report card, and privacy. Anything else you want to talk about, Dee Dee?
All right. Well, I won't take too much time. I do want everybody should know that the school report card is now open for the 22-23 school year. We're asking districts to verify that data and approve the data that's been entered in the card. It's going to be a longer review period this year because some of the assessment and accountability data is going to take a little bit longer to get done and ready due to some accountability changes for this year. So that data will probably not go out public until late October or early November, but we'll continue with the review cycle. Some of this data is used for other things, so it's important to have good data available and have some confirmation. Our next round of data that's going to release out will be CTE data and also that data and some of the equity data that will roll out in early September. So if you've not started, we did have a poll question. It looks like there's about, last I looked, about evenly split. If you've not started, this is take a team approach to this. This is, a lot for one person. Have your districts, your schools review, let your district review from there, split it up. But do think that we're still waiting, switching topics, we're still waiting on civil rights data collection, some dates on that. We were at a conference last week and they were there and they still couldn't give us dates. This is not for 22-23 data. This is back for 21-22 data. So data is getting quite old and they still haven't opened up the collection window. So we still expect that to happen sometime this winter. Definition of that, dates, we don't know beyond that. There will not be any releases scheduled, or there are not any releases scheduled for the Infinite Campus system in August. We take a break in August and try to take a release early and a release later so that we don't impact your beginning of the year activities and the needs for the system to be up at all times. So I do want to mention again the no lock feature. There is that guidance Infinite Campus has put out. They've also put a frequently asked questions about making sure that the no lock feature is turned off in any of your SQL work that you've done in data exchanges. If you have questions on that or you've not seen that frequently asked questions, I'll put the link into the Go Soapbox so that you'll have it, or you can reach out to me. We've got some training opportunities. We talked a lot about, before I want to go on, I do want to remind you, today's supposed to be the due date for the Infinite Campus invoices. Hopefully everybody's paid. I think the numbers were pretty low last week when I didn't get a new update before this conference, before this webcast. So I don't know exactly how many districts we have still left to pay, but today is the due date for those payments. They've had since April to get those in. There are some upcoming trainings. If you've got new folks and you're trying to figure out how to get training done, take advantage of some of the online training that feds have done. I mean, they're good. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. There is a training tomorrow, August 16th for the FERPA 101 and FERPA 201. There's another one, the 23rd, on data security and data breach incident response. And then August 30th, there's vetting educational technology and transparency. And I know everybody struggles with the latest cool tool, let's use it. But there are FERPA implications and there's things about collecting information from students you got to think through before you just turn on a free app because it might be good. And the process in each district is probably a little bit different, but so there'll be some big best practices shared in that training. We do have some mid-year training that'll be done in January. So we'll have that scheduled, the beginning of year training. Well, we had over 600 people register. People were on and off to different sessions. The training materials are available and the training was recorded. So it's out on our training page. So if you need to use that as a resource, please do so. We've got just a last reminder on this electronic transcripts. Electronic transcripts are free for graduating seniors until the end of this month. So really it's August 30th, not 31st. It's August 30th for whatever reason. Those transcripts. So if you can kind of remind your counselors, it might be a good idea to go ahead and release all the graduates from last year one more time to make sure that they're good data. And that way, if they need those transcripts, they're available and can get those easily. And at no cost until the end of the month. Other than that, David, there was some cybersecurity training, things like that that's been out. I will put a link into the Go Soapbox on some of that stuff too. I don't know enough about it to cover it, but it is good information.
Did you want to cover anything the conference you went to with this group? I know we were talking about that in our leadership team meeting.
I go every year. I represent the state education agency for the National Council on Education Statistics. So it's a lot about, I'm on the technology committee. I've chaired that committee in the past. I'm vice chair of NCS Forum right now. So a lot of good information about data and how we can streamline data. There's a new collection opportunity now for anybody to comment on duplicate forms of collection of data to try to streamline what they're collecting, new ways. A lot of that is earmarked to the state level because we're providing the data, but we all know that it comes from you all. So you have a vested interest in making sure that from the federal level, they're not collecting data more often or in ways that don't make sense to us as the collectors of that data. So that opportunity for comment is out there. A lot of good information out there about the standards, the importance of standards, the importance of using our technology. We did, Eric Gordy and I from Infinite Campus did a session on machine learning and had the opportunity to promote the early warning system that has been developed in partnership with Infinite Campus in Kentucky, and how we branched that out to be more than just an early warning system, be a data visualization, the tools that are available to districts to make data easier to use. And I think, maximizing quality and making data more usable and is always going to be like a prime goal of everybody at that conference. So a lot of sessions around that information.
Dee Dee, let's show your 3 Go Soapbox questions. Let's just see them and bring those up. Marty, if you could do that, it's a good time to do that.
So, David, the first question targets the Affordable Connectivity Program. And again, we have really good activity there. I did drop in to Go Soapbox for others down in the social section that we've, again, made another jump, which is great. We're up to 45% participation in Kentucky. We are getting outpaced by 3 other states right now. So we want to push that. Ohio being one border state to us that we want to make sure that
gotta do better.
And really just a charge towards the more communication that we have. We did have, and David, if it's okay if I add right now, we did have some activity where we pushed forward a kind of a statewide push on a letter that gets pushed through Infinite Campus. Districts have picked that up. Not all districts, but we'd like to see more activity there. And that's a great tool. It's a great tool, especially if your district also offers the ability for parents to tap and download through Parent Portal the report card. That's another easy document that helps if you get a question to show more proof that your student is enrolled in a Kentucky public school. So that's another point. And Dee Dee, I'm sorry to jump in on this. I know that we're working on this together, but I thought it would be good to just promote and push one more time again, and we'll probably keep doing this throughout the year to push on the ACP participation.
Right. We had really pushed on it last in the spring, trying to get families the opportunity to get set up over the summer months to be ready for school starting. But now's real. Summer's over, and unfortunately, and they're school ready. And if there's technology that can help them and resources to help them pay for that, we're hoping that you'll do anything you can to help promote that.
This is really encouraging compared to the Lifeline program, which was, part of the package of E-rate that was established in the 90s. But I think there's a little thing beforehand that paid $10 a month, and I want to say the adoption rate in Kentucky was around 10% or less.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a high percentage of low-income parents were not aware of it, did not know all the steps to go through it, and didn't have someone walking through it. So 45%, well, we'd like to have that, double that. 45% is very good, especially compared to where we were with Lifeline in comparison to other states. Obviously, we got to do something about Ohio, Marty, but
that's right.
A couple of those other states that are ahead of us. But just in all seriousness, we want as many parents to take advantage of that $30 as possible, and that really just helps anyone. I spent a lot of years coaching 5 different sports of youth, boys and girls, and you get a really good flavor of the stress that families are under, and that really does make a difference. And so I do want to get that message out there.
And generally, David, what we're seeing is ease of communications. And so when parents receive a notification with a standard form or letter, which we've posted on our Kentucky Department of Education website as a model, when parents can get that letter, push through Parent Portal, and then also have easy access to additional documentation if questioned, then we're finding success. It's not 100%. It depends on when the application goes into the queue, which person they get at the ACP level. But it's been really good.
And we're working with the Kentucky Broadband Office because, as you're probably aware, if you're not, there has been just an enormous amount of federal money that has been made available to the areas that are underserved or don't have anything at all, which is great. But the reason this is important is there's been a couple studies that have been out there, including by Connected Nation, that talk about education superhighway, I should say this now, owned by Connected Nation. Talk about the by far the biggest inhibitor of parents having internet access at home is not about not having an internet option. It's a very high percentage that can't afford the one or ones that are there. And so I'm all the time reminding folks there is we can put 5, 10, 20 internet options in every county, in every part of the county. But if you don't address this issue right here, you're staying where you're at for the most part. And so obviously we understand there's X%. When we do our survey, we had 5% of students that didn't have the internet option available to their house, but that 5%, reduce it down to 3% and 2% if they could go walk nearby. This is a funding issue. And it always gets confusing to folks thinking, well, they hear kids don't have it, is they want to run off and build yet, 10 other internet links in there. And that's okay, but they just still can't afford it. So I always want to keep this on the radar screen of folks, especially having grown up in a area that low income and you see it, and I've coached in the kids in it, and you can really see it is a money issue of affordability. Woodford County, where I live now, lots of internet options, but in coaching youth sports, both boys and girls, you can see a high percentage of parents that I had on my teams could not afford that. And so this would be very helpful to them. Let's go to the next question.
So before you go forward, Dave, I just want to mention something real quick. Obviously, I agree with what all you all said, and I think everybody has to be in tune to this conversation and make sure there's communicating, sharing these opportunities. But I guess I want to give a word of encouragement. Maybe one of you all did it, and I just missed it and went by me. But I think we had 25 or 26 responses on that. And I know we got more than 25 or 26 districts that are tuned in right now. So we really need for you all to respond to this. It's most meaningful if everybody responds to these. It's not that difficult to do, and it's most meaningful. And we know that we're getting a good representation when we got everybody responding, especially these poll questions. So I just encourage everybody to do that.
Thank you, Mike. It is helpful because if you notice in the summary notes, we post these. And I show, depending on some of these questions, I show the results to the appropriate parts here on KD, the agency, or other state agencies. So please take the time and give us this feedback. I like your point, Mike. Let's go to the next one.
This is a school report card, and like I mentioned earlier, we had a kind of a mix here of some people are not involved at all in this, others are involved on it, and even completed it. So it's not, the only thing that was due already is the safety data collection has to be approved. Beyond that, you've got some extra time. We know this is a busy time of the year, and there's going to be some more data that'll be added the 1st of September to review.
I'd say this just as a coaching point as a CIO is I go to a lot of meetings here at KD, and I invite myself that aren't necessarily pure technology, because I want the other associates and leaders to understand is I'm engaged with what they're doing educationally and in tune with it. And when they're going down the path to do something is to include me. Now they hear enough about, here's 4 things, it plugs into something. If it's internet, it's data, voice, and video, it's digital. But part of this is too, is you may not do it, but I just think it helps you not being bypassed. If you do things that you go to things that are not related to the areas that you maintain, and sometimes just purely educational. And at some point they recognize I'm going to show up anyway, because I don't think they've ever had one to say, don't come, or no, you have to leave the room. But they recognize I'm going to be engaged in it, especially if I think there's going to be a technology enabled component to it. But even if someone's going to put a roof on a house, roof on a school, roof on a building, I try to be engaged with it because usually there's other components that are involved with it. We found that out with the FFA camp. FFA wasn't really thinking about, well, we need to include certain folks there. And so I encourage you to do that. So even if you don't do this daily, I encourage you to stay engaged with it. It just makes you more visible in your district. I try to walk that talk and always have in the roles I played. here and at the U.S. Army and the technology roles. Okay, next one.
This last one is about the infinite campus payments. So we have kind of either been paid or they're not sure. So I think we got a few that'll check, and we will send out the list of those that have not paid through the KEs.
Okay.
And we being collection agents, this is not our favorite time of the year. But it's important to make sure that those payments get made to continue that service.
Okay, thank you. I'm next going to talk about some of the results of the that happened since we met last, particularly in some important areas. I'll start with funding. One of our top goals is to get a raise in the Kentucky Education Technology System KETS funding and make it a funding priority for the 2024 legislative session. So a couple steps have happened is Commissioner Glass and the Commissioner's office have been very supportive in additional budget requests. Our Chief Financial Officer has gone above and beyond the call of duty, Robin Kinney, to help us get this on the radar screen on the importance of addressing the KETS funding and getting an increase with it to address some of the cuts we've had over the past years, the point of desperation we are to raise that and the impacts of raising it. So I really appreciate my teammate here at the Department of Education, Robin Kinney, because she presents to a lot of different audiences that I'm not there, but she represents us well. And she set it up really nicely when we presented, and this was presented to come up with the Kentucky Board of Education's financial priorities. And KETS was raised really high. Now, the other parts of this that were really nice is we have, for example, a former CIO EdTech leader from Boone County, Randy Poe, was very supportive and very vocal and very articulate of why the increased funding is needed for KETS. You have Steve Trimble, former superintendent of Johnson County, and also played a temporary role there, I think, in Floyd County after he retired. Also very supportive and vocal during the board meeting. Lou Young, who was the former chair for a while, she's now the vice chair, of course, former superintendent of Jessamine County, also very supportive during that meeting. And you also have Sharon Robinson, who's our new board chair, was supportive of it. And Lee Todd, former owner of a company and president of University of Kentucky, which was interesting during our discussion. If you watched Oppenheimer, Lee Todd has a connection with Teller, who was mentioned and was quite involved with what was going back on the 1945s. In fact, Teller had a lot to do with Lee Todd going to MIT, which I find a fascinating connection. And so as you're watching that movie or watch that, keep that in mind. The Teller character knows Lee Todd very, very, very well. But I appreciate all those, along with the rest of the board members, and we had some new ones that were very supportive, enthusiastic of making it a funding priority. I've also worked on a one-pager to meet with legislators, which I'll start doing this month, and given the green light to do so. And so I will start meeting with the Kentucky legislators one-on-one, and maybe in committee meetings. And it includes the one pager is, one of my favorite lines is, we are the pioneer national leader in most aspects of education technology. And our services are valued by KD agency and districts, not 100% perfect, but valued. I take them through the next paragraph what our funding was back in 1992. It was 19.5. It has been whittled down to 15.4, and the impact of that to all school districts, Kentucky School Deaf and Blind, and 51 ATCs and KD agency. So we talk about the baseline being raised, and the funding request is for $148 million. 30 million of that is to raise the KETS baseline, but it includes items like refresh of the end devices across the state, which I know a lot of folks bought a lot of those during the pandemic, but they'll start to get aged and need to be replaced, or the ratios will get worse than they were before. I talk about how these services are used on a daily basis. Also, the value added of having state shared services contracts like Munis and Infinite Campus, and even our KH, our services for internet, is how we drive down prices by 50 to 60% by buying en masse within a certain period of time, and that's just basic economics. And we've seen the prices, for example, of Munis when an individual district buys it outside of Kentucky, And I tell you, that's a whole lot more than what they pay collectively. So if individual districts were trying to pay what they pay now, they would pay 50 or 60% more versus using the buying power to leverage that to reduce costs. We also talk about what we do with E-rate funding and with our offers of assistance to get a 4-to-1 bang for the buck. No other really state has that. And I always think it's a good investment in it. So a lot of this with legislators, you want to show we've been good stewards of taxpayer money, which we have for 30 years. Knock on wood, we've never had an incident, serious incident, and through that. And that there's a lot of people involved in making sure that happens. We've been good stewards of it. And just remind them also that we use the data systems that they rely on for decision making with Infinite Campus and Munis is funded through these funding mechanisms. And if they want to keep on getting that data, that they need to put that in place to address our funding needs, and also because we have product standardization, and it helps us with our cybersecurity. So having Munis statewide, Infinite Campus statewide, and an internet system, not that I'm challenging cyber criminals that are out there, but really, if you take a look at Kentucky compared to the other 49 states, there's a whole lot less success here in Kentucky than the other 49 states on successful breaking in the things we put in place. A lot of that has to do with that. And, a lot of things we put in place, including what we're doing with computer science, are preparing students for the future. And these are skill sets they must have for the future. And so, these are the items I've laid out. And, we talk about things that will stop if they don't get the funding. For example, online registration, the virtual library, we're paying for at the state level. Those will go back to district costs that they got to absorb 100%, and then probably will certainly pay an increased cost in what we're paying per district now. The KETS offers, are at risk of being reduced if we don't get something to do to address the funding. Turning down bandwidth is a possible option. It weakens our cybersecurity defense. Our digital learning coaches stipend is impacted, and these coaches played a big role. E-transcripts, which DD was mentioned, becomes at risk. We have outdated computers. The ratios get worse. Our district technology staff stay tremendously understaffed, and our campus learning analytics. If you can think of anything else we talk about going bad, this is the time to bring it to my attention as we're doing the talking points. So I want to make you aware that I've been very supportive, and I could not have asked the Board of Education to be more supportive in their verbiage and their actions, making KETS one of their very top priorities going into the legislative session. So that's good news. Obviously, my ask of you and districts is to share that and help with your superintendent on supporting that. When a legislator asks your superintendent about it, or your chief financial officer, your board members about it, that they give it an enthusiastic thumbs up. That benefits you in multiple ways. But that's my ask of all of you to regularly do that, just not once, but during this time. My understanding really is the budget is starting to get set now. And so by the August-September timeframe, really in the House and Senate, is they will have a pretty good idea of what their budget is going to be proposed in the upcoming legislative session. So the timing to do that is now. And so you'll see us going full court press in August and September with legislators and meetings and committees to try to get this up on their priority. Obviously, we have a governor's race on November 6th or 7th. And obviously, if the existing administration stays there, then we'll work with them. The new administration will work with them and trying to get it. That is one of their top priorities as well, going forward. So that, to me, that's good news. Also, the board approved our KETS operational budget, which is $491 million, by the way. The second most we've ever had in KETS history. Last year was the most we have ever had. I think it was 505. And so that's from all the funding sources. And once again, Kentucky has by far the best handle on the money spent on technology from all funding sources, federal, state, local. No other state comes close to us. And a lot of that has to do with our standardization in Munis, our commodity codes structure that we have really gives us an edge that we can see that. The reporting that districts provide, and you'll talk about technology activity report. we can see it, and also the district readiness survey really help us to really make sure our numbers are solid. Obviously, we based our master plan on a lot of that. So our next step is we present to the School Facility Construction Commission. It's the last step as far as the offers are concerned. Happens on September 6th. And once that approves, then we can start the KETS financial offers of assistance. And I believe overall for the next school year is $21. And how much is that first one going to be?
Yeah, we'll do the first one at 12, the second one at 9 for 21 total. And we'll, obviously jump right into that process of notifying districts as soon as we get past the School Facilities Construction Commission review and approval of that.
Okay. And for our new COs and staff, we do 2 offers. One is with some of the money that's been approved by the legislature, and the other parts with the E-rate rebate funds that we get back. We use that mainly for the second offer. So also the Kentucky Board of Education and the local superintendent's advisory committee, the LSAC of superintendents met on 25 July. They were very complimentary about the new master plan and unanimously supported it with a lot of great comments. And those comments were written and given to our Board of Education members who also enthusiastically approved the 2024 to 2030 master plan. So I appreciate, first of all of our staff, our OET staff and district staff that helped us get input and put that together. Obviously, we've been working that even in our CIO summits that we have at KISTI, the past 2, is we asked questions and got feedback during that. And so we included all that feedback that we've gotten. And I described it just like a lesson plan is at some point where the teacher really has a good lesson plan to teach a subject, and they'll tweak it along the way. But being our 6th version of the master plan, I think we really this is the best one we've ever had. And it identifies the things we need to keep on doing well, along with things that we need to address going forward, including some new items there. So I appreciate folks' feedback. Also, during the same board meeting, they approved the regulation on leases over $100,000. And just a reminder to you all, 99% of that is legal. I want to say 99.9% of that is legal. So your legal representation for your leases needs to get very engaged with that, because there's a checklist that was created by Office of Legal Services, not by OET, that they have to go through. Before that was voluntary. Now, when that regulation goes through the process and being approved, it's still voluntary now because the reg is not yet officially law, but it's been approved by the board. But I suspect it will be approved, and 99.9% of this whole process is legal. And just a reminder, our part in OET takes about 5 minutes, if that, and typically it's approved on the same day. And our part is really writing the approval note that we send to the commissioner's office that sits ready once the legal gives a thumbs up that all the legal stuff is there. That's really our role, is we just create that note the same day we get it and really waiting on the legal part of that. So all the parts of that regulation that mentioned OET are all gone. And really, this is a legal part of it. So you need to bring your legal staff and really make sure if you're involved with leases, that part of your organization needs to get really involved now for you. And they really need to champion it even more so probably than you, be given it's 99% a legal thing, if not more. Let's do some quick status on our technology-enabled RFPs and contracts, next generation K-12 internet, the Connect user experience, report card, and professional learning systems.
So I'll give a real quick, and I know that this is items that also is being discussed in more detail in the KE regional meetings as well. But you mentioned them just then. Obviously, the next generation K-12 internet is a new contractual arrangement that we have and transition that we're going through to be completed. The transition to be completed by July 1 of 2024. Obviously, there'll be ongoing efforts after that to maximize what we're putting in place. The comment I want to make about that one real quickly is that, a transition within a highly functional enterprise which is what we have today, is not going to, it does not occur without some complexity, some risk, and some possible disruption. And so I really want to encourage folks to just continue to be aware of that, be mindful of that, and be patient of that as they engage in this ongoing effort. Because again, it's kind of like if you're building a new house and you're starting from a bare foundation, that's a whole lot simpler than if you're remodeling a very functional and complex layout of a house. And if anybody's done any of that kind of stuff, they'll understand what I'm saying. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we're transitioning within our highly functional environment that we have. But the fact that we have a very highly functional environment makes this kind of a transition much more complex than if we were starting with nothing. And so anyway, I just want to encourage folks to be mindful of that. And I know that that's an ongoing message, and we've said it, and we're going to continue to say it. But this is and again, timing is comes into play there too. In order for us to be able to transition in what is a very tight time frame, I add to that as well. So anyway, I just wanted to add that comment. Anybody can add to that, add any additional thoughts to that here in a minute. You mentioned a couple other ones. Connected user experience. That's an active procurement. It's out, posted. That's public information. There's not a whole lot more we can say about it than that. It's got several days left. It'll be out there posted, and so we're going through the process to end up with a contractual partnership at the end of that allow us to be able to complete a lot of our objectives and goals associated to that. Let's see, what's another one we mentioned here? School report card is, again, active procurement, continues to be going through the process to, again, the end goal there is to end up with a new contractual arrangement partnership to deliver on the objectives for our school report card. And again, it's no longer posted, so that phase of it has closed. Again, public information. But there's obviously a lot of steps that are involved after we've received the responses and reviewing and scoring and all that kind of stuff that goes into where we end up with a new contract out of that. I think the other one that we wanted to mention was a professional learning environment that's also posted. And so that one's out there, again, active procurement. And again, the objectives there that we've spoken to is to create an opportunity for content and learning professional learning opportunity, professional development opportunities, I guess I want to say, and make those available. So Mark, I don't know if you got any comments on that one or not, because I know you're more close to that one than I am.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I think this will be really the first time that we've mentioned the professional learning management system, RFP. Again, active procurement. It's posted right now. The desire is to have a solution that's offered by the Kentucky Department of Education that captures all of the professional learning content that is offered throughout the agency. Currently, today, we do not have a one-stop shop for example, our Office of Financial Operations, who offers professional learning for finance officers, and our Office of Educator Licensure and others. So we want the desire on behalf of our Office of Teaching and Learning is to have a single platform for all learning content for teachers and leaders across the state. And so it's an active procurement that we're excited to see take that next step. Thanks, Mike.
And we're working Office Teaching and Learning, obviously, on it. This team effort, and this is another good. I always try to have a good relationship with our chief academic officer throughout the years, versus them going off and building something. So I really appreciate them. This has always been, let's work together on it. Yeah.
David, I think kind of the next thing we had was to put a reminder out there and a notification on the digital readiness survey due September the 15th. I know we've got some things that are still being added to that. So the ones that have gotten in there early, I think, have some additional, got to go back into it to finish up some things. I know the KEs have that again on their agenda to go into detail about in their regional meetings and where that's at, and are working with the districts closely on that. And then also the technology activity report, same due date. I believe we have September 15th on that. And again, the emphasis on, and again, a topic for the KEs will cover and work with their districts individually about where they're at and any additional guidance they need on doing those. I know we had a little bit of an issue with getting into the technology activity report through the credentials. I think that's being worked out. And again, the KEs will update the districts on that. But I think we wanted to also, or I know we wanted to also emphasize, the importance of these reporting tools that we have and how that feeds into really a lot of the stuff you were talking about earlier, is how we work aggressively to protect this investment of this environment to today and for the future, from the funding aspect as well as just the overall general support of what we are doing here in Kentucky with K through 12 technology enabled stuff. And us having that information is a lot more. I know we've said this, every year and multiple times a year, but it is much more valuable than a lot of folks even realize, as far as for us to be able to represent what's going on, show an accurate representation, and to use that again to help support and contribute toward our I want to say argument's not a good word, representation of the continuing need to keep keep what we have and to keep it growing and being enhanced as it needs to.
Thank you, Mike. I'll hit on one other topic before we close and go into a closed session here. This last week, the Katie leadership team was given a presentation of a dashboard that's being created by our teacher licensure folks, another different office. I just want to give you a heads up on that. It's not been fielded yet. We're actually taking a close look at it in OET. I can tell you the data sources they're pulling from is the school report card, the new teacher certification system, KEX, and KEPS is the the vacancy system that's out there. And I want to say something about KEPS that I've regularly said to folks. It's important, and my staff hears this, and you all should know this, is and our staff should have this memorized, by the way, is what are the 5 key things that need to be in place for you to have a high quality data element. And it's over and over again. And this is a report that we created several probably over a decade ago to really help as people came and go here, for them really understand what you have to have in place to have a high quality data element. And so I gave this, and I also educated folks about, for example, the KEPS system. You can have KEPS, you can have 10 others that replace it, but unless you have something that these 5 elements, it doesn't matter what system is in there. And so I say that to you all as you're taking a look at this whenever it's fielded, which I suspect it will be soon. So this is mainly to give you a heads up. But typically the top thing you need to have a high quality data element is a law or reg that requires it to be collected by districts. Collected and kept up to date, I would say. And one of the main problems with KEPS is it not being populated. It's the vacancies being removed once they've been filled. And I've heard that from my own children who work in school systems about looking at positions and realize they were filled because it's only once every 6 months or 9 months that's cleared out. But when you're using it for decision making, as folks were really trying to get a handle on teacher vacancies, is what we found out is they were filled, but the district had just not removed that vacancy, so it looked like there was still a vacancy. And there is no law that requires districts to remove a vacancy, which makes that data, and people got to be aware of it, very inaccurate if it's only updated once every 6 months and they're taking a snapshot at a certain part of the year. So people got to be aware of and good with, well, the data quality of that is not 100%, it may be 50%. So as I've explained to folks, if you want that more accurate, then you have to have a leverage point that says you just don't have to enter a vacancy, which I think is required. But within X amount of time of that vacancy being filled or removed, you have to show that within the KEPS environment itself. So that's number 1, a law or reg. The number 2 thing is you typically have to have a carrot or stick, something that is great, as motivates someone to enter it in and keep it accurate. Just not entering it and populate it, but keep it accurate. So average daily attendance, and thank you for Marty for posting that. It's in our new master plan, that graphic, and I appreciate the team that's working on that. Is some kind of motivator. So for example, average daily attendance helps you get your SEEK money. And so districts are very motivated to get that entered in. The third one is, even if you have a law and a carrot or a stick, is we find that data is much more accurate if the district values it. So to me, it seems like a district should value not having vacancies out there posted that have been long filled, or the vacancies no longer there. They no longer need that position. Seems like there'd be frustration with the district to do that. So it seems like it'd be motivating for the district to keep that up to date. And 4 and 5, number 1, law and reg, number 2, carrot and stick, number 3, district values are really closely related on 4 and 5. The district has someone locally that inspects the data to make sure it's in the ballpark. And number 5 is there's someone at the state level that's inspecting to make sure it's in the ballpark. We do this similarly with the data sources that we collect. The TAR report digital readiness survey, we have folks in our OAT staff that take a look at that to see, does that look right in the ballpark? And if it doesn't, we circle to you all, who are the data stewards for those data elements, to say, explain this to me. Explain to me why it's blank, or explain to me why this number is way off and not in the ballpark. And so that's just a way of me just do a little minor teaching point here on data quality, and thanks for posting that. So we're gonna stop here unless someone has something major they want to cover. We're gonna pause there. Chuck, I'll let you just go ahead and speak, and then we're gonna talk about in a closed session e-games and e-sports a little bit, particularly the Nintendo Switch. So Chuck, you have a comment.
Yeah, just real quick, David. So this is a shout out to a lot of the brand new EdTech leaders we've got out there that this is their first run, all right, at school starting. So my word of encouragement to you guys is make sure you stay connected to the community, okay? Make sure you stay connected to your peers. Make sure you stay connected to our staff through our field staff for any help or guidance or mentoring that's needed because we know it can be overwhelming. All right, so just wanted to plug our new EdTech leaders, David, number 1. And then I am going to, since I've got the mic, and yes, you can take it away from me, back on NGKI. All right, just to tag Mike a little bit, this thing is kicking up into full force. And the most important thing I can share with our EdTech leaders right now is number 1, stay attached to your KETS engineer. Okay, because there's a lot of communications and a lot of activity that's going on right now with make-ready work and construction work and scheduling and readiness guides. Number 2, stay flexible, all right, because there's a lot of things that are going to be, thrown at you over the next several months, especially as we work towards scheduling, which as of right now, we've done through December, and we'll be starting on January, February, March, the 24th schedule pretty soon. And last but not least, stay engaged with the right folks internal to your school district around construction activities and things like that, okay? Because as Mike mentioned, we're going to do everything in our power to keep this as non-disruptive as possible. But as you know, when you start doing construction level activities, they, and by their very nature, can be disruptive. So involving your folks on the facility side, school principals, any of those folks in that process, just to make sure they're aware. So David, at that, I'm going to give the mic back to you with those 2 plugs.
Thank you. And Chuck, you sent me the talking points our field staff is getting ready to have with districts. Much like we encourage you to once a month tune into this in your busy schedules, and we record it. So obviously, if you can't see it live, I hope you're watching a recording. And obviously, we share the summary notes. We're the only state in the United States that does this. So it's trying to reach out, it's trying to communicate, keep you informed. And so we're the only state that does a monthly webcast like this, but we're by far the only state that writes a written summary of that. And actually, that's Lisa Moore that's writing the summary of that. So thank you, Lisa, who goes through and listens to it and pulls out those points, and that you can catch up or you can cut out parts of those and share it with your appropriate staff. So it's really our effort. It is a two-way street of us trying to be engaged with you, but also you engage with us. And so I encourage you for our regional meetings, because we become aware of what Chuck and staff, he does a good job of saying, hey, we're getting ready to cover this regional meeting. So we try not to spend much time during this, but recognizing we see those agenda items, understanding they'll be done at a high level. Even when I get an update like the board that really wasn't on here of the talking points, I'll spend some time with it. So it really is important that you stay engaged with both of these. And, while it's not 100%, perfect, I do believe we have the best relationships with districts in the United States. And I talk to my peers, and that's a two-way street. A lot of this is we've had joint success over the years in doing these large scale initiatives, and definitely the things that we're talking about here with our next generation internet, cues. Those are two huge types of efforts that will definitely require, great work with our vendor teammate within OET, but also with our districts to make it successful. And that's been our bread and butter for years of our success, a key part of our success, and why we've been having such a good success rate. So I'll stop right there, and
David?
we're gonna end the formal part of this. For those that want to stay on, and the rest of it is optional, is we're going to talk about esports, in particular e-games for the Nintendo Switch. It may be a little bit more associated with that, but we really want to do that in a closed session without it going on the YouTube broadcast. So for those that are,
But
go ahead.
before you close out, I know you like to reference or mention the social questions that came in through Go Soapbox.
Okay.
Just there was a really great share that got bumped up by several folks from Nathan Seaton about an example, he detailed out another vendor fish, a pretty advanced vendor fish from their district. So just encourage folks to check that out. But other than that, there were no additional social questions.
Thank you. I was trying to periodically check it too. Okay. So Megan will say goodbye to our YouTube audience, and we'll say goodbye to our Teams audience. We're going to stay on the same connection. So for our OET staff and for our district tech staff, the rest of it is optional time for those may be helpful in this process. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next month.